So it seems that some movie trilogies have trouble wrapping it up with a really good third movie, and while Civil War did it brilliantly, X-Men Apocalypse is not quite so. So X-Men Apocalypse takes place about 10 years after Days of Future Past, which is kind of funny because none of the characters seem to have aged. So Apocalypse is supposedly the world's first mutant, and he's risen, and basically he wants to take over the world, destroy it, wipe it clean, and then build his own from the ashes. So Apocalypse himself is super powerful. He has like quite a few powers under his belt, because apparently he has the ability to transfer his own consciousness into someone else's body, and when he does that he acquires their powers as well. So over like a couple thousand years he's been doing that to stay alive and basically become immortal, and by doing that he's acquired all these powers, so he is pretty overpowered. And along the way he always has 4 followers, like the 4 horsemen. So in this movie it's Angel, Psylocke, Storm, and Magneto. And this is also the first X-Men movie to introduce younger versions of Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler. Now you're not given too much backstory on them, but you're giving enough story to basically understand their powers, their motivations, and the dynamics between them are all really well done, and the actors who played them are really good as well. So I definitely enjoyed the new characters, younger versions of these classic X-Men heroes. So if you've seen Days of Future Past, you'd remember Quicksilver's kitchen scene, and he basically has another scene like that, which is even more awesome than the kitchen scene in the last movie. So Quicksilver once again steals the show for being completely overpowered but completely awesome as well. And it's also nice to see like new renditions sort of Cyclops' powers, Jean Grey's powers, Nightcrawler, and of course mutants like Psylocke. I don't think we've ever had a Psylocke on live action before, so that her powers are definitely pretty cool to see. And Michael-Fassbender as Magneto, at this point I don't think anyone else can dispute the fact that this guy is one of the best people to ever play Magneto as a character. Ian McKellen is good, but I really think Michael Fassbender is much better as Magneto. Like, he has so much depth and layers to his character that you really understand his motivations, Like, Magneto is actually not an evil guy. He just has a different idea of what the world should be. And in Apocalypse, you really get to see why Magneto is, evil. You get to see why he thinks this way and why he thinks, mutants are superior to humans. So the acting was definitely on point for both the new and the old characters, except for maybe Jennifer Lawrence, who I felt was kind of phoning it in with her somewhat boring performance, but otherwise she's okay. But the thing is, guys, this movie is not without flaws, and that pretty much explains the somewhat mixed reviews and low ratings that the movie's been getting. Apocalypse himself is not a very good character, I would say. He doesn't have a lot of depth to him. Oscar Isaac is a really good actor, but I don't think he was really able to bring anything much to Apocalypse. Like, it could have literally been anyone else, and I think it would have been as good. It didn't need to be Oscar Isaac, and it really didn't give him enough time to shine, basically. Like, at the end of the day, I felt like Apocalypse was quite forgettable, like the villain in the second Thor movie. You guys remember him? Probably not, because he was as forgettable as that. And despite the fact that Apocalypse is pretty much kind of overpowered, he's able to manipulate things on a molecular level, it seems. He's powerful, but he doesn't have sort of like a menacing presence. Like, Ultron isn't that powerful, but Ultron had that intimidation factor, even though he wasn't the best villain in the MCU either. But Ultron was more menacing than Apocalypse, in my personal opinion. But that's my other point. Like, Apocalypse, I feel, is a bit too powerful, so that how are you supposed to beat a guy that's essentially a god? He did an equal amount of godlike powers, and some of you guys might have already guessed the ending to this movie. But that's all I'm gonna say, because otherwise it might go into spoiler territory. And even though they did have some new side characters like Psylocke and Storm, and even Jubilee, a lot of them were actually sidelined pretty badly. Like, you didn't actually have a lot of depth, no real development, and they didn't really get enough time on screen. So that was kind of disappointing, since they hyped up all these new characters so much, but in the end we didn't really get to see much of them. And the thing is, this movie is 2.5 hours long, but it does feel very rushed, because they do cram a bit too much plot points in, which are not then resolved or elaborated upon. Like, for example, how is it that Apocalypse has been around for I don't know how many thousand years, but mutants supposedly have been around only for a couple years? Like, where were all the mutants in the few thousand years before Apocalypse woke up again from his sleep. And eventually the movie builds up into a finale that isn't quite as satisfying. It's kind of mediocre, definitely not as good as the previous two movies. So I guess X-Men Apocalypse is definitely the weakest of the three latest X-Men films. Not to say it's bad, it does have some really awesome parts, some really cool parts, some parts that are really fun to watch, like, you know, the Quicksilver scene. But for all those really cool parts, there are some equally uncool and kind of boring parts. Like, I felt there was a bit too much talking and build up at some points, and really not enough fighting and not enough powers. And that's what people are here to see, you know, people watch X-Men to see powers and fighting and all that cool stuff. So it is flawed, it isn't as good as the previous two movies, but I'm still excited to see future X-Men movies and where the franchise moves on from here. So despite it being the weakest of the three, I would still say this is at least worth a watch or a stream. Especially if you've already, you know, watched the previous two movies. You'll probably find this enjoyable anyway. But that's about it for my thoughts on X-Men Apocalypse. If you guys have seen it, I'll know what you guys think in the comments down below. So don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you guys next time.